Hey everyone, Danny Taylor here, and if you're anything like me, you probably threw up a little in your mouth this morning when you woke up, looked out the window, and discovered that winter had thrown up just one last time on Elgin. It seems as if this just won't go away. I think we've had enough now. I want it to be spring. I want things to begin to come back to life. And speaking of things coming back to life, back on Easter Sunday, just a couple of days ago, I described how John's Gospel portrays Jesus' life as like a commentary on Genesis 1 and 2. Jesus reenacts the events of the opening chapters of the Bible. Both of those books start with "in the beginning." Jesus parallels the 6 days of creation by 6 signs that he does. God rested on the 7th day because he had finished from his work, and Jesus echoes those very same words from the cross, "It is finished." And Jesus gives new life to his disciples by breathing upon them in the same way that God breathed life into Adam. But there are a couple of other images too. Obviously, we know the events of Genesis 1 through 3 take place in the Garden of Eden. What you probably didn't realize is that the events of the crucifixion and the burial of Jesus actually take place also in a garden. John 19:41 says, "Now in the place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden was a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid." This scene of the crucifixion does not take place in the arena of death. It takes place in an arena where life re-emerges. Earlier in that gospel, Jesus had told his disciples, "Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." Jesus is that grain of wheat, and Joseph of Arimathea probably didn't realize that he was actually planting Jesus in a garden. And at one last point of contact with Genesis, in Genesis 2:15, we are told what Adam was as a career man. He was a gardener. That was his job. And in John chapter 20, there's an incredible detail that we tend to skip by when we're reading the story. Mary Magdalene was the first one to encounter the risen Lord Jesus. And when she did, she mistook him as a gardener. Now, why did she make that mistake? I can't prove this, and it's only a matter of speculation, but I like to think that she thought of Jesus was a gardener because, maybe like Adam, he was doing some gardening. I love the idea that when Jesus first woke up from the sleep of death, the first thing he thought to do was to plant a tree. And if I'm right, this tells us a number of things. First, it tells us that creation is still good. Even if it's corrupted by sin, the world that God made is still good, and our responsibility to it has not changed either. Our job as the people of God is to take care of the world that God has put us in. But we have an even greater motivation too. The resurrection of Jesus Christ not only gives us new life both now and in the world to come, but also compels us to share new life and to create new life wherever we can. The resurrected Jesus seems committed not only to opening up new access to a new and better world, but equally is committed to restoring and renewing this world. Jesus is committed to taking this world and bringing beauty to it, taking this world and restoring life to it. Jesus takes the trouble to do some gardening because as far as he is concerned, this world is worth the trouble, and we can make this a place worth living in. There are a lot of ways that you can honor Christ as Lord in your life. There's obedience to his commands and trust him for his finished work, submit to his authority and worship him as Lord and God. But one of the most often overlooked ways that we can live a resurrection life and bring honor to Christ is to get our hands dirty, plant a garden, bring forth life, and make this world a world worth living in. So let's get our hands dirty. Let's mix some compost into the mud. Let's bury seeds in the ground. Let's pull weeds and water plants and watch them grow and share their fruit. The resurrection of Christ does not compel us to sit idly by waiting for some sci-fi evacuation. The resurrection of Christ reminds us that there is work to be done just as soon as the weather breaks.